the main event was a mix of emotions, right? Because how do you not feel for Walt Harris, and felt like everyone was pulling for him, even though Overeem's one of the legends of this game, and people really respect him, and he's about to turn 40, and it's always great. Always feels like a big deal when Overeem fights, but because of what Walt and his family had been through, I think everyone had a soft spot in their heart, and it looked like a storybook finish in the first round. Then it seemed like he got really tired in the second, and then obviously Alistair finished him, and then there was that great embrace at the very end on the ground where he invites him to train with him and whatnot. It was weird because, like, I'm happy for Alistair, and you can make a strong case that he's now, should be on a 4-fight winning streak if that fight against Jairzinho goes 4 more seconds. And that was a great comeback when people thought he was done not that long ago and his chin was weak and all that stuff. But I still felt really bad for Walt as well. So I was a little bit torn on Saturday night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it was a situation where you honor, you give credit for Walt even being in that position to fight, right? Like that's so difficult. Um, but then ESPN did some fantastic pieces on Walt and his relationship with his daughter Anaya, and it was Walt wanting to honor her through his performances. Um, and I thought that it was great. I thought that that was a great um, reason for him to be competing. But with that comes a little bit of pressure, right? And I just hope that Walt didn't have so much emotional connection to the fight that that's what fatigued him, because that might have been part of it, and it sucks, because I understand as a guy who's lost a daughter, right? Although my daughter was very young, how much of a toll that takes on you physically and emotionally. So for Walt to be back in there competing, that was great, but I don't know if maybe that storybook ending that oh my goodness, I'm gonna knock out Alistair Overeem after going through all this didn't like exhaust him. Like, oh, it's happening. It can be
Right.
exhausting carrying all that emotional weight and carrying the physical weight and also fighting one of the best fighters in the world and in the history of mixed martial arts. So I thought he started well, but I mean, you couldn't help but be rooting for him. And I'm telling you, man, I was hoping the ref would have stopped the fight. I was like, and I like Alistair, but I was just hoping that he could have that moment, where he could just, like, I know it would have felt like a weight lifted off of his shoulder if he won the fight, and was able to dedicate it to his daughter. But I think that was a harsh reminder that life isn't a fairy tale. And um, no matter how much the world or people want for you to have success in these types of situations, doesn't always work out like that. So sad, but hats off to Walt for being so courageous and putting himself on display in such a tough time for him and his family. But
Yeah,
yeah,
he handled it so well, right? I
yeah,
mean, leading up to it, he had to talk about it so much, and
oh,
afterwards, he
and that's
handled it
the
well.
hardest thing, just talking about it all
Right.
the time, especially when it's so fresh. Like it being so fresh, talking about that, Ariel, like that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
do you think like I'm a little bit off base in regards to that? With the emotional baggage maybe played a part in the fatigue, or
Well, I mean,
it
as you
just seemed like
mentioned,
I'm more tired than he usually does.
as you mentioned, I mean, you can sympathize with him more so than many, right? I mean, you know what it's like um, to lose a child, and I can't imagine. His was fresher. She was a lot older, so he had those memories with her, and it was just so horrific. And honestly, I was surprised that he wanted to come back in April initially. But hey, if that's what he needs to do, like, who are we to tell him otherwise?
Mhm.
And it seemed I was, really looking at him, his body language, his face, his reactions when he was walking out to the cage. I thought in that moment we would get a sense for how he's feeling, because again, I don't have to tell you, but the walk to the cage is an emotional one for you guys, because I feel like all the motions and the trials and tribulations of the training camp, and you're going in there with another human being in a cage. It's a lot to handle. Here he is walking in an empty arena. He's probably thinking about his daughter, but he was smiling. He was in good spirits. And then the fight starts amazingly well. I don't know if he gasses because of the pressure he put on himself or because he was just gassed out. I mean, he was really pouring it on him. Spoke to Overeem earlier. He said he felt like he was a little bit out of shape. And so that's for Walt to address himself. But I mean, you could have made a strong case for it stopping. And I don't know if a lot of people would have argue with that on this one. You
Well,
know what I mean?
if you got the official, I mean, Alistair took. Oh, I don't really want to say this because it's gonna be like, because I'm not trying to. But Alistair took more damage than Cruz did
Hmm.
in the title fight, right? Like Alistair took more extended damage than Dom had to, which is just, again, it just shows the ups and downs and the differences in officials and the differences in the judges and everything. Um, it just shows like the differences in the way that people approach doing these fights.
Alistair has 4 more fights on his contract. He told me earlier today that he wants to finish them out. When he gets done with those 4 fights, he'll have 96 fights on his resume, including kickboxing as well. Is Alistair Overeem, in your opinion, a threat once again in the heavyweight division? Like, does he have a run left in him, or do you think he'll be, kind of the sort of guy who will fight like the Derek Lewises of the world, top guys, but won't get past that level?
I think Alistair Overeem is very good still. I think Alistair Overeem will struggle when he gets to the very elite,
Hmm.
because I don't know if there's a time where he has to fight Francis again where it's going to change. Like I don't know if he fights Alexander Volkov and the result is different. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that those championship days, while they can be recreated, he just turned 40. It's hard to build back up to that title fight with an extended run. I'm 41 years old, right? And I'm fighting for the belt. If I was having to build back up, I don't even know if I could do that. If I'm
Hmm.
being honest with you, I don't know if I could go through 3 contenders in order to get a title shot. I just don't know. But I do know that on one night you can still go and win a fight. So if you tell me Alistair's fighting for the belt next, maybe he might become the champion. But does he have that run in him to get back to the top? I think there's going to be a hiccup along the way, and then it sets you back. And when you're older, you can't have setbacks. That's what the Rosenstrike thing did. Because if he
Yeah.
wouldn't have lost to Rosenstrike, he'd be right. Like he'd be one of those guys that you're like, man, well, is Alistair Overeem ready again for a title shot? Like, so I think that he'll do fine, but I just think that there'll be hiccups along the way that will deter him from getting back to fighting for the championship.
Yeah, he says he wants to fight Rosenstrike again. I don't hate that idea. Usually they don't run him
He
back
was
that
winning,
quickly. He was
but
winning
he was
that fight.
winning the fight. But he was easily winning the fight.
Right.
But people can't remember the end result. His lip all jacked up and him getting knocked out. Like, for unfortunate as it was, for as dominant as he was, and I'm not talking like he just killed Rosenstrike, but he was winning 24 minutes of the fight. Like Jairzinho didn't do much at all outside of that flurry at the end. So um, I think them fighting will be good, but also maybe Volkov's got Curtis Blades, but it's just a rough.
Derek Lewis, not a bad one.
Derek Lewis, not a bad one. All those guys in the top 10. I mean, all those guys in the top 10.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.